Today we are going to continue to discuss the distributive property. So when we are doing the distributive property, what we first need to do is use a line to break apart the arrays. In this case, I outlined it with red for each problem. Then you need to use the numbers and symbols to show a multiplication sentence with parentheses. So what your new multiplication sentence will be, including both multiplication problems. Then you will use the numbers and symbols to show the addition sentence. Then you will use the symbols and numbers to show your product. So for example, here you have 4 times 2 plus 4 times 2, which is equivalent to 8 plus 8, which gives you the product of 16. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to walk you through a PowerPoint that has different arrays. Now, here's what's going to be interesting. Today, we are going to do day 1 with this PowerPoint. And then tomorrow, I'm going to show you the exact same PowerPoint, but the arrays are going to be broken up in a different way. The thing with the distributive property is you can break the array up into multiple different equations, right? So here you have the problem 8 times 2, which would be 4 times 2 plus 4 times 2 if you break it up this way. If you broke it up into 2 chunks, which would be 8 plus 8, giving you the product of 16. Another way you could have broken this problem up would have been by doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 1, and then 8 times 1, which would have given you 8 plus 8 as well, giving you 16. So with the distributive property, the neat thing is you can break your arrays up different ways. One thing that I always like to say is we love our numbers ones. 2, 5s, 10s. We know how to skip count by 1. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So if you have 8 times 1, the answer is going to be 8. If you have 8 times a million, the answer is going to be a million. We all know how to skip count by 2s, going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and continued on. And we know how to skip count by 5, starting with 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, continuation, and skip counting by 10s, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. You might be wondering why I'm saying we like to pick those numbers, but when you do your distributive property, I like to use those numbers to help me multiply because I know how to skip count by them, and you should know how to as well. So question number 1, we have 3 times 6. Again, if you don't know your 3's facts and you don't know your 2's facts, or your 6 facts, you can break this array up into 2 times 6 plus 1 times 6. Now, since you know your multiples of 2, you can skip count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, which is 2 times 6. And then you can do 1 times 6, which is 6. When you add those together, you get the product 18. Next up, you have 5 times 4. If you struggle with skip counting by 5s and you do not know your 4 multiples, you can break this array up into 5 times 2, like you see up here, and 5 times 2, which you see down here. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 5 times 2 is also 10. When you add those two together, you get the product 20. A way you can double check yourself is going back and counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And down here below you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Continuing on, we have 7 times 2. Our array shows 7 rows, 2 columns. We can break our 7 apart into 5 and 2. Why 5 and 2? Because 5 plus 2 equals 7. So now instead of having 7 times 2, we would have 5 times 2 and 2 times 2. 5 times 2 gives us 10, and 2 times 2 gives us 4. When we add those together, we get 14. Now, one thing to remember as we continue to go through this slideshow is the most important thing about the distributive property. You can only break up one of the numbers. You can either break up the 7 or you can break up the 2. You cannot whatsoever break up both numbers. Here we broke up the 7, so we have our 5 here and we have our 2 here. This 2 remains the same in both problems. So remember the distributive property. You can only break up one of the numbers. And we shall continue. Here we have 4 times 6. I am going to break apart my 6. I'm choosing my 6 because 6 contains 2 of my favorite distributive numbers, which is 5 and 1. 5 plus 1 equals 6. So I'm going to make a new number sentence. My number sentence is 5 times 4 plus 1 times 4. 5 times 4 equals 20. 1 times 4 equals 4. When I add those together, I get 24. And we continue. Here we have the array 5 times 3. When we do our distributive property, we can break this up into a new multiplication sentence. In this case, I decided to break up the 3. I have broken it up into 2 and 1. So my new multiplication sentence is 5 times 2 plus 5 times 1. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 1 is 5, giving me the product of 15. Last but not least, we have 7 times 3. 7s are not facts that I always have memorized. 3s is a little bit harder to skip count by. So instead, I decided to break my 7 into 2 and 5. 5 plus 2 equals 7. So that is how I broke it apart. I also only broke apart the 7. My 3 remains in this problem, and my 3 remains in this problem. So first and foremost, I have 3 times 2 plus 3 times 5. 3 times 2 gives me 6, and 3 times 5 gives me 15. When I add them together, I get the product of 21. So it is now your job to go practice using the distributive property on your own. Remember our simple rules. Only break apart one of your numbers. Make sure you write your multiplication sentence with parentheses and an addition sign in the middle. And then once you get your answers, add them up to find your product. All right, get started.